now I'd like to invite up to the podium former Representative Vicki Strong from the Northeast Kingdom.
Good evening, everybody. This is my first time back in the State House since having served office. I served here for 6 terms and 12 years, and during that time, I supported many informed consent bills, healthcare freedom bills, pro-life bills, because the rock bottom faith I have is the sovereignty of our bodies and the sanctity of human life. And once we move away from those core issues, those core beliefs, then we open up ourselves to any kind of government whims. My story really begins with the loss of my son, Jesse. Jesse was a Marine and in 2005 gave his life for freedom in Iraq. And that set me on a course of really realizing the cost of our freedoms and how easily they're stripped away bit by bit. And COVID showed us in a big way how easily stripped we can be of our basic human rights. For me personally, I decided not to be vaccinated, and I had to submit a religious exemption, which to me was a violation of my privacy. And because of, I didn't know who saw that religious exemption, anyone in the State House could have known that I was not vaccinated. I was forced to test regularly, which I often skipped or stuck my swab under his thing. But in that course of time, I felt isolated and somewhat persecuted because of my beliefs. Also, my husband was a pastor during that time, and churches were forced to close. And then in silly ways, when we were allowed to open again, you weren't allowed to sing. Does anyone remember that fun little thing? Just go to church and listen to the music, but don't open your mouth and sing. Sit many, many feet apart, wear masks. And finally, our church just said enough, and we just worshiped openly and without regrets. And for me personally, I also lost a job, a part-time job that I'd had for 25 years, Weight Watchers, which was helping people be healthy and lose weight. And now that support for many, many people no longer opened up after COVID. So that was a job loss. But I want to talk specifically about, for the next couple minutes, about what happened to me in an ironic way as a supporter of informed consent. During the COVID time, we had traveled, my husband and I, to Texas, came back on an airplane. Everybody's wearing masks, except for when you're drinking, right? Having a ginger ale. So we both came down with COVID, whatever that was, however that's diagnosed. And he ended up with a pretty serious case of pneumonia. I took him to our regular doctor, and they said immediately he needs to go to the hospital. They took him by ambulance. I'm following behind. And as soon as we pull up to that hospital, the staff comes out and said, to me personally, had I been vaccinated? And I said no. And had my husband, and they said no. And while he's being carried in on a stretcher, really not even real coherent, they said, would you like to be vaccinated now? And I'm like, what the heck? He's sick. You know, you're going to give him a vaccine now? But in the meantime, they told me I had to stand back and was not allowed in the emergency room or to even step foot in that hospital. And so for the 3 or 4 days he was there, I could only talk to him on the phone, or I drive to St. Johnsbury where he was in the hospital and hold up a sign and he'd look out of the window. I had received one call from a doctor that whole time. It was really when he was just admitted, who wasn't really willing to talk to me more than a few minutes. And during those days he was there, he was given remdesivir and a few other drugs that I was vehemently against. They were also experimental and has turned out to be detrimental to long-term health. And now my husband did pass away 2 years ago. I'm not sure how much of that episode related to his illness. He had heart disease, but it certainly didn't help him. So I want to just remind us again, what is it we're willing to stand up for? I stood up for healthcare freedom, and I will continue to do so. And there are many here today who lost jobs, weren't able to go to weddings, funerals, and a long list of things that maybe in some ways we've forgotten the cost to our freedom. So I'm here to represent that cost. I thank you for listening, and I wish us all well in the continued fight for our freedoms.